Thank you so much, Yusri, Feng, and Frank once again for sharing your valuable insights today, especially to Frank, who is powering through a fever today. For those who are tuning in on live stream through TechJDI's Facebook page, we are going to be ending the live stream right now. If you have any questions for us or for any of the speakers, do feel free to leave it in the comments, or you can privately message us as well through TechJDI's Facebook page, and hope that you can join us on Zoom during our next webinar. So with that, thank you everyone for tuning in. For those of you who are joining us in Zoom itself, we are going to be moving into the audience Q&A segment. So for now, I think we are going to be spotlighting Frank, Feng, and Yusri. And I believe we already have some questions, right? So three of them are really busy. We are really lucky to have them to join us during today's webinar. So if you have any burning questions or any follow-ups to their presentation, now is really the time, right? So I'm looking at the questions right now. Just give me some time to go through them. I'm definitely going to be prioritizing, right, the questions that the speakers are, or the questions that the audience are asking here. Please do not be shy, right? If you want to show your video and unmute yourself to ask your questions directly also, you might do so. But we already have some questions coming in from the chat, so I'm going to start with that first, right? First, we have a question from Wesley De La Cruz. Thank you for your question. So for startups, typically do developers in Vietnam expect ESOP? So I think this is referring to the employee stock options program, and how do they view, right, the ESOP in general? So I think we can keep this open. It will be great to hear the perspectives from all the speakers. Who wants? Maybe we can give Yusri a bit of a break first. We can start with Frank.
Oh, okay. I may not be the right person. Feng may have a different understanding, right? Because Feng is actively involved over here. But my thoughts are that ESOP is not something generally accepted in Vietnam at the moment. So when you hire developers, developers are still looking for a career opportunity, right? Looking for salary, for knowledge, for a home that they can go on and then to grow at the skill set for the longest period of time. So ESOP, they generally do not have an understanding of it or trust in it until maybe they work for you for some time already, or maybe you are going for the more senior headcounts when it's not just about the salary, they want to be more involved in the company. Then that's when they're looking at that. But if you're looking for developers between 0 to 6 years kind of thing, I don't think they are looking for that. Maybe I pass it over to Feng because Feng may have a different understanding because he's more involved in the company's running.
Yeah, from what I have seen, ESOP is welcomed by some developers and not by all, because in Vietnam we also have a lot of scandals relating to ESOP from companies like banks. So the trust for ESOP may be still at a low level, but the developers have more experience. They may understand that ESOP is a good opportunity for them to get a better bond with the company. So it depends. If you are working in the blockchain startup and you offer some ESOP, I think it is really hot currently.
Oh, yes. So it seems like that's right. The blockchain piece is totally different, right? Because blockchain, everybody's about tokens. You can get tokens, you can get 10, 20, 30x. So I'll move that over out from the discussion for ESOP currently.
So it seems like it's still not generally popular or well accepted in Vietnam yet. I guess it still depends on a case-by-case basis and whether there is long-term alignment, right, with some of the senior persons in Vietnam itself. Yusri, do you have any points to add on that in terms of offering ESOP to your tech team in Vietnam?
I think it's something that we will definitely consider. But the conversation about ESOP in general has not really started in my startup. But I think I do have similar thoughts with Feng regarding the general acceptance of ESOP in Vietnam. Perhaps in Singapore, I think it's a lot more acceptable because I think it's quite common and things like that. Yeah, but in Vietnam, I think if we do consider ESOP, we will actually just offer it, but it's really up to the developers to actually consider it. The other thing is also, Refurish is a very young startup, so it's not really established. So general acceptance for ESOP in Vietnam will, I think by my suspicion, it's going to be very, very low. Yeah, Singapore is probably a different story because I think in general in Singapore, they'll look at who are your investors and things like that. They'll do this kind of check. So it's not just you're interviewing potential employees, they are also interviewing you at the same time. Yeah, so definitely they'll be doing all this kind of checks and seeing how potentially viable your company is.
Yeah, so thank you to all the speakers for sharing your perspectives. Hopefully, right, as Vietnam's tech ecosystem or startup ecosystem starts to mature a little bit more, then it might be a little bit more acceptable as what we are seeing today in Singapore. And Wesley, hopefully that answers your question. We have another question from Vicky. This is a rather long one. Oh, by the way, one of our attendees, Naidu, he had a shout out for Fung to thank you for your presentation earlier, right? In case you missed it in the chat. So back to Vicky's question. I understand that remote work is the future of work, right? However, as per your perspective, will remote work replace traditional face-to-face interactions? And if yes, are there any specific industries that we will see this happening first? So again, I think this is quite open and it will be good to hear from everyone's perspectives. I see Fung already unmuting himself, so maybe we can start with Fung first.
Yes, I think that eventually remote work will truly replace the almost most traditional face-to-face interaction. Currently, we are seeing this trend very strongly in IT technology. Yeah. Almost everything related to IT companies can be remotely convertible, including, and HR is also happening like that. HR financing, they are moving to the cloud-based, and there's a lot of online platform that recruit members from every corner of the world for companies somewhere in the world. So they don't have to need face-to-face interact. They just work online.
What about Frank and Yusri? Do you agree or do you disagree, or how is it like for you in terms of the future of work?
Okay. Okay. Maybe I won't really be. I may not be answering Vicky's question directly, but I think I just want to share some thoughts I have regarding remote work. In general, I think remote work is definitely going to be the future of work. A lot of things. Many things right now, especially as accelerated by COVID, we are basically going almost 80% remote, but there are still some advantages to face-to-face interactions that as a CTO that I feel has not really been fully overcome by remote work. I think, say for example, when we are actually, one thing about remote work is that it forces us to make our documentation better. Okay, so I think in a startup that is kind of a good thing, but the bad thing is that it of course takes up a lot of effort because you don't see your members face to face. So basically everything goes into written form, and you have to make sure that everything is as clear as possible. Otherwise, you have quite a bit of communication issues. But I think with better tools and things like that, of course, one of the things I miss with my remote team is actually the ability to use a whiteboard. Okay, when you are in person, okay, you have the whiteboard. The whiteboard is like the best thing ever, you know, when working with your fellow developers. Yeah, so, but I've been trying to explore potentially new alternatives to the whiteboard. Maybe, I don't know, we've tried things like Jamboards by Figma, and maybe even just a Google Doc sheet where we just type things out. But I don't feel that it has totally replaced that. So I think 80% of the time, yeah, remote work is basically going to be the norm. But there are certain things that you actually miss about in face-to-face interactions. And yeah, and I think, but as I mentioned, I think the good thing is that it forces you to do your documentation better. Yeah, so if your documentation is not well done, then good luck. Yeah, that's what I have to say. Yeah.
Frank over here. So I think this question is a very big question. Just to share, over the past 2 years, right, because of COVID, I returned all our incubation space to JTC, 600 square meters of space, all returned back. So now we are working in the co-working space. We only go there for meetings, right? And that has some cost savings, but it's also affecting work itself, because there's nothing better than everybody sitting down in the room, as you said, with a whiteboard there to write everything down. So that's a compromise. But I do feel that now I don't have to go to office. My office is just in my house itself. I just come out over here. There's no thing. Oh, I forgot this thing at home. There's no such things already. So it becomes much more convenient. Yet at the same time, it has its challenges. Because number one is we're not in the same room. Every time I want to make a call, I need to schedule with somebody, see their calendar, and do things. And it's also not the same. I can't see the expression. I can't feel the differences. What is his hesitation on these points? You don't get that thing across. So I think in the end, it will be a mix between both sides. We will go to office. I think co-working spaces are going to be very popular because of that. You go there for meetings 1 day or 2 days a week and sync up before you go back and do your work. So we are going to be seeing a lot of more of the online working tools. Like for example, you should say Figma is there. There's Jam also, which is like a whiteboard thingy. So I think whiteboarding is going to be a very important aspect for technology moving on forward. Right, and all of us need to somehow get used to this, or there will be inefficiencies because of that. But it's a trade-off, between does it make sense for you to sleep offline all the time, or is it online? And I'm also seeing that the remote team, some of them, I think tech team is fine because they're deliverables online. But there are other cases whereby they are supposed to be, doing work, but because they're not in the office, you can't monitor them. So how do you make sure people do the work? So that's going to be a thing. We're going to set KPIs. Are we going to run this by using systems to measure KPI? Are we going to keep tracking people online to do their work, or is it basically off the deliverable basis? I think all this we need to iron out to make this viable. But I do feel remote is here to stay. Not in 100%, but maybe 50% or more.
Yeah, so it's really interesting to hear from the different perspectives, right? Frank more from a business owner perspective. Yusri, to him, is a double-edged sword, right? Where there's more effort required for engagement, but documentation is forced to be improved, and a bit of whiteboard withdrawals as well. And then Fung really believes, right, that remote is the way to go. Frank thinks it's a little bit of a hybrid, but hopefully, Vicky, that answers your question. So we'll move on to the next question, and for this, I'm going to give Frank and Yusri a little bit of a break because this question is actually directed to Fung, right? From Mr. Huang. How do you think about using Scrum for your team? And they echoed that there's agreement that communication is key to success, right? Which echoes what you shared during your slides earlier. How does Agile and Scrum help you in communicating and building the culture for an offshore or remote team in Vietnam? And again, building along the lines of this, right? What is your advice to transfer and build up the company's DNA or culture between the Vietnam team and the Singapore team? So this is quite a long question. I'm not sure if you can see it. Let me know if you need me to repeat this. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. For the first question, how do you think about using Scrum for your team? Yeah, I think that Scrum has been working well for us since the beginning because we are a remote team. And when I built a team in mid-2019, I want to make sure that our team are competent. That's why we apply Scrum. And every day we regularly export the daily logs so that the Singapore side can have some visibility over what we are working on. When we use Scrum, besides giving the Singapore side visibility, we also give the Vietnam team some motivation because they know that their work is being recognized by the Singapore side. So they will focus on the work and they are really serious about that. When you have to say something about what you did yesterday, you will try to do something instead of doing nothing, because it will be a bit embarrassing to report that, oh, I didn't do anything yesterday. So I think that Scrum is really useful for remote team, like in our case. The second question, how Agile and Scrum help you in communicating and building culture for offshore? You have already got that in for the first question. Same as for the first question, Scrum make the two sides know about each other. The Singapore side at least have a recorded logs of what we did, so they know that we're working on something. They can check at any time if they want. And for the Vietnam side, we also have the culture of being very proactive. And we always prove that we are competent to the company via our daily work. The third question, what is your advice to transfer and build up company team DNA between Vietnam and Singapore, right? Actually, I recommend that the Singapore team also join the daily Scrum. I see that it seems Singapore doesn't have is not very comfortable with daily reporting their work. It seems that they prefer weekly reports. Because when we recommend to apply the same Scrum process for both Vietnam and Singapore side, until now only the Vietnam team keep doing that. The Singapore side has quit it a long time ago. But we do have a weekly meetings where people can still report what they have done over the last week. So my advice is we need to establish the same process for both local and remote teams, not just remote team. The less discrimination, the better.
Yeah, Fung, thank you so much for breaking down the questions and answering them patiently. I actually want to open up the third question to Frank and Yusri as well. If you have any points to add on from your perspective in terms of, how do we make sure, right, that the culture, the DNA between the Singapore-Vietnam team is aligned and in sync. Do you have any points to add on those?
Okay, Yusri, yeah, I'll go first. I think one thing is that being a remote team, okay, and in my case, unlike HyperX, we do not actually have two separate teams, as in one in Singapore and one in Vietnam. So for both my current startup and my previous startup, I'm basically I'm Singapore-based, but my tech team are in Vietnam. So we don't really have this kind of so-called discriminatory practice. So it's always basically when we talk about tech work and things like that, I'm basically switched to Vietnamese calendar and timings and things like that. So if the Vietnam team is having a holiday, that's when I'll have my holiday. Singapore is having a holiday, but Vietnam is not, then I'm not having my holiday. Yeah, and I think prior to COVID, one of the very important things is actually to fly over to Vietnam and be with your team. Okay, so in my situation, we did our sprints were timed to meet with my travel arrangements. So typically sprints tend to be 2-week sprints, perhaps 1-week sprints, but we made these adjustments where we decided, okay, we'll do something like 3 to 3.5 week sprint. So what happens is that at the start of every sprint, I'll be there for 2 weeks. So it's roughly every 4 weeks, I'll be in Vietnam for 2 weeks. So this helps at least in terms of the technical side of things, where we get to work with one another on a very regular basis together in the same office. And at the same time, the management team will also fly over to Vietnam on a fairly regular basis. Maybe perhaps not as frequent as I do, but so I'm basically, I fly there once every month and I stay there for about 2 weeks. Yeah, so I think this is a very important part of building your company DNA. Of course, my previous startup, it was a very small startup, so pretty much the DNA was, I would say, Vietnam-based. Yeah, because most of us were actually in Vietnam compared to Singapore. Yeah, for my current startup, I think we are quite Singapore heavy. Okay, and of course, COVID is also making it very hard for me, for anyone to actually travel. But hopefully, the government opens it up around May this year, I think. That definitely, I think we've not really decided what will happen, but definitely, I think at least for a start, I'll be probably flying over to Vietnam to visit my team. Of course, my current team in Vietnam is actually spread over 2 places because we decided it's going to be remote, so we are not really particular about where they are based. But I think in the long run, as we grow the team, we'll probably make a decision whether we want them to work in an office or continue to be spread out the way it is now. Yeah, of course, when the team is spread out, it's a bit harder to actually organize get-together sessions. But if they're based in one city, at least perhaps if it's in Ho Chi Minh, we could meet at Tech GDI's office for a get-together session. So these are some of the things that we are still thinking about, and it's not really set in stone. Yeah, but definitely I think Singapore side and Vietnam side have to meet frequently, whether it's remote or in person. And as mentioned earlier, Singapore and Vietnam, we need to share and be open about each other. Okay, so if there's any updates from Singapore side, it's very important to actually share it with the Vietnam team. This is part of your company. It is not a standalone, outsourced, independent team that they are all basically a mercenary team. They are part of your company. So everyone needs to feel part of the company. So this could take place as a town hall, monthly town hall or something like that, yeah. Or maybe even virtual makan sessions, lunch sessions, dinner sessions, yeah. Give everyone maybe some Grab vouchers and get them to order their own food, yeah. Then we'll eat together. These are some of the things that I think that can be done, okay, yeah, to actually build up your company DNA between both Vietnam and Singapore, yeah. And definitely, I think in the long run, in the future, you may not even just have one remote team. You may have multiple remote teams, and it's very important that this kind of practices is regularly done and kept up, okay, so that everyone feels part of the company. Yeah.
Okay, Yusri, thank you so much for the comprehensive sharing. Quite interesting to see the two different scenarios, right? Where in Fung and Hydra Access case, there's both the Singapore and the Vietnam team. Whereas for Yusri, it is just the remote tech team as the first tech team, right, for the startup. Frank, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to skip you because we still have a few questions and we are running a little bit of time. But as Yusri was sharing, I see both Fung and Frank nodding their heads, so I think we are all in agreement with that. The next one, again, this can be open to all. This is from Marcus. What is the typical timeline to have a fully functional tech team built from scratch? So maybe we can have Frank to take this first.
Well, this is not an easy question because it also depends on how experienced is the original team to build this functional tech team or offline. But I'll just give some kind of time. Sorry, some kind of timeline over here. When our clients give us the JDs to build a team, maybe they want to build a 10-man team. So it always starts with the JD first. So with the JD, my recruitment team will go out there to find the people. Within 1 month, we should have some JDs over here on our hands already to interview. So the recruitment process typically takes about 1 month, and it should be within 1 month. Otherwise, they would have gone to some other companies already. So if we kept that recruitment phase within 1 month, and then maybe add another 1 month for them to resign from their job if they are in other companies right now. So I would say, yeah, to onboard, just to onboard itself, it will take between 1 month to 2 months. Right, for people to come on board. But let's say the CV doesn't come in, it may drag into the next month itself. So in the fastest case, you get 50 people on board in 1 month. In the slowest case, within 3 months to gather people on board. But I'm just talking about onboarding. But if you're talking about a fully functional tech team, there's also the next part about onboarding them into your company processes to be familiar with the role so that they can start producing. That may take another 1-2 months to do that. So all in all, it could be half a year before you could get anything stable to run. Yeah, and also depends because some of my clients, they actually have very good remote managers. Some of the TPMs, they come in remote from day one. They've been managing teams in Russia, in Poland, in Philippines, etc. So from day one, they have all their playbooks ready for people to come on board immediately. This is what you do. This is what you do. This is your check-in. So that processes is very well oiled. So that they only have the first part of the onboarding that's important for them. Yeah. So I extrapolate out from that. I think in the remote management skill set is going to be very important for all managers. Not just TPM, but also other business managers, function managers, because we're not gonna escape from that. Yeah, so that skill set I think is something that we all need to look out for to increase our own abilities in, and also when we interview other people to come on board, they need to have a remote mindset.
Okay, Frank, thank you so much for sharing that. So in terms of onboarding, ideally 1 to 2 months, if not 3 months, but that's just the onboarding, and then how far and how long you grow is dependent on how you sharpen your skills and experience in remote management. Fung and Yusri, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Do you agree with the 2 to 3 months timeline? Or do you have a different number? Just a one-liner so that we can keep time and move on to the last question.
I think I totally agree. It's about 2 to 3 months on average. Yeah. So if you really want to build a team, one thing I would say is that if you want to hire for multiple roles, think about backup roles also. Okay, because sometimes you may find a very good manager, sometimes you may not. So if you can't find a good manager, where do you go next? So if you need to build everything in the short time, you need to think about backup roles. Yeah, and look for all those roles at the same time. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I also need to qualify myself one more time. Sorry, Daryl. It is a market that is over demand, too little supply. Correct. So if we still want to build that, there may be cases whereby there's no people that's suitable to join your team, and then you drag on for 6 years, 6 months, or even 1 year. Okay, so that's my quick disclaimer.
Fung, very quickly, do you agree 2 to 3 months? And you also echo that there is over demand in Vietnam.
Yeah, I think that it depends on how big you want the team, because here you don't say the size. So if you just need 2 or 3, yes, 2 3 months can be okay.